job interview is one of the most anxiety-provoking situations most people can find themselves in, even when they go to plan. But what happens when you have your worst interview ever? Our guests share their worst interviews ever in the hope that you will take something from their mistakes to have a more successful interview outcome. Some of the stories are horrific and some are just downright embarrassing. Let's join our host, Kevin O'Reilly, the interview skills coach with over 25 years experience in the fields of coaching and recruitment. Let's welcome our guests to the show.
Welcome to another episode of My Worst Job Interview Ever. With me, your host, Kevin O'Reilly, the interview skills coach. Did you know that the interview process is one of the main barriers to most individuals changing jobs? This show is for anyone who has an interview or is wanting to prepare for one in the future. Our guests have been there, done that, and are still doing it at the top levels of business. And they share with us their worst job interviews ever. So we can learn from their experiences so you can get the job or career you deserve. Some are unbelievable and some are just downright embarrassing. Today we have on the show Andrew Kelly, a business owner of 8590, a digital content creation company who has worked with the likes of Lego, Levi's, and Miss Universe, just to mention a few of his clients. He has also been the finalist for GB's Entrepreneur of the Year 2 years running. Andrew, you're very welcome to the show. How are we today?
Yes, all good, Kevin. Thanks for having me on. Really excited to be here.
Good. And I think what you have to share with us and our listeners is going to be very valuable for them going for interviews. You have quite a breadth and depth of experience going for interviews across several different industries. So this is going to be a great podcast to listen to. But Andrew, before we start, like I do with all my guests, share something that not very many people know about you.
One of the things I guess people don't really know about me is that I'm actually a two-time lottery winner as well. Now, I wouldn't be getting too excited. I'm definitely not a multi-millionaire when I say I've won the lottery twice. It's been £10 each time. So it's always a good one to throw into that game of, two lies, one truth, because no one ever goes for the lottery answer.
Oh, that's very good. That's very good. In that case, I can say I've won the lottery twice also.
Yeah, we're in good company then.
Oh, absolutely. What did you do with your £20?
I had to split it with my brother because, I was so young and, mum and dad were always about equality and you got to share with your brother. So, yeah, we went halfers on it and I was probably spent on football stickers or sweets or something exciting like that.
That's hilarious because that's pretty much exactly what I had done as well. You gotta share. It was my brother, my father, and myself all done it. But this one day, I had 3 of the numbers, and my father had the other 3 in his line. So together on the one lottery ticket, we had the 6 numbers, but just unfortunately not together.
No, not together. I know it used to be a thing, my dad and my brother and myself always would have went on a Saturday to the newsagents and we always would have done the lottery. And for anyone listening who doesn't remember, you used to have the ticket and you had to put an X on your number and then take it to a till. And, dad would have picked 2 numbers, I would have picked 2, and my brother would have picked 2. So, that's something that was always a family tradition when we were younger. So it's sort of nice to still have that memory. And yeah, we got some winnings out of it.
Oh, that's wonderful, isn't it? And £20 is a lot of money back in when you were a young fella.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You could buy quite a bit for £20 in the newsagents. I don't think you'll get too much change now with it, but certainly back then, when you're 6, 7 years old and you've got £20 in your hand, you certainly feel like you've won the millionaire.
Absolutely, indeed. Well, Andrew, thanks for sharing that with us, and I'm sure quite a lot of people will be able to relate to that. Being lottery winners, whether it's £10 or £1,000,000, you're still a lottery winner.
Mm. Yeah,
You
no,
know?
absolutely. It's something, I always say in business now, it doesn't matter how big the win, you always celebrate those small victories because sometimes they're few and far between. So no matter what the success is, big or small, we always celebrate it.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that, and you have to because they are few and far between. You try to stack the deck in your favor, but it doesn't always happen. And that's lovely how we can now turn this towards this journey that you've been on to get you to where you are today as a business owner. So if you would like to tell our listeners, where'd you come from?
Well, I guess the first point I always make is that it hasn't been a straightforward journey. And most journeys are not straight and simple. This is kind of a windy path to where I am today. So I went to university, did all the academic stuff, came out with a degree, and ended up having to do freelance work, working for charities, just to gain that experience. And I guess not much has really changed in that sort of 12-year period. You're coming out of university, and most companies are looking 2, 3, 4 years experience, and it's how do you get that as a graduate? So, I just did a lot of freelance work and built up that experience over the years, and then eventually got a short contract in public sector, and again got experience in a different side of that world, and just sort of building up that experience over the years, which actually led me to getting my first job in a PR agency. And that was actually one of the things they highlighted in my first interview was it was doing all that volunteer work and building up that experience, which actually really set me apart from the other candidates. So that was sort of 2014, and that was really my life until late 2019 when I decided that I had achieved everything I wanted to achieve. I was ready to move out into the big bad world and start my own business. I've always wanted to be my own business owner, and the wheels were in motion, and the plans looked great. And then the end of the world sort of came in early 2020, and all those plans were essentially put on hold for 6 months. So they were. So there's lots of different jobs that led to this path, but lots of them had valuable learnings from them, good and bad. I always say there's no such thing as a bad experience in life. We always learn something, no matter what it is we go through. So yeah, sort of a windy road, but at every stop there was always something that set me up for where I am today.
I think that's, again, very relative to most of the listeners and even myself, that it's never a straight line to get to where you want to be. There's always this turn, or there's a backward step, or there's a sidewards movement. There's always something. And I think and believe that people get really disheartened because it's not a straight line and because it's not as easy.
Mm.
I do love what you said though about volunteering to get that experience. And I find that quite funny. I was reading a graduate job description the other day, and it said on it, must have 3 years experience. And I thought, how is that possible? Now, were they looking for senior graduates who potentially have been back in, restudied, and already had some experience, but were just doing the qualification? But for someone who's coming straight out of university with potentially no experience, and this being a graduate post, I found that really strange.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I said earlier, not much seems to have changed over the last 12 years. I think if anything, from when I graduated, it's gotten worse. You look at some of the job descriptions, especially around digital marketing, and companies are looking for that unicorn. It's the impossible find. They're essentially trying to roll 3, 4 jobs into the one, and obviously pay a graduate salary for it. So, they're looking someone to be the SEO expert, the graphic designer, the video person, the photographer, but also be able to do social media. And realistically, that's 1 in a million for a graduate to find that. Plus, you add on the 3, 4 years experience on top of that. I think it's very unrealistic for companies to sort of expect that. And I know even from my latter years working in agencies and in-house, these graduates are coming in and they're maybe getting a couple of days experience, and then they're going out and they're sort of a little lost because they don't know where they're going to next and what to do. And there's probably a bit of a void there for them. So yeah, as much as I thought I had it bad 12 years ago, I really do feel for graduates now trying to even get a foot in the ladder. It's not even so much about what you can do now, it's almost who just to be able to get that experience. But I think looking back to my student days, one of the things I always did during that extended summer period was trying to get a couple of days experience with companies, even if it was maybe only for 2, 3 weeks, because it's very easy to go enjoy your summer and hang out with your friends and do what you want to do and go on holidays. But in the long run, if you can still build a couple of days experience a month over that extended period, it steads you well for the future. Because employees look at those gaps in employment and what you've done in those months when you haven't been at university. And again, that can work in your favor if you can show, you've been determined and went out there to try and get that experience. You may not necessarily have the 3 years, but you're showing you're determined to work, and you really want that place in that company.
That sounds like a really great attitude to have. Where does that come from within you? Is that something that you've experienced in the past and thought, do you know what, I need to really knuckle down here? Is that something that's been
Mhm.
inbred into you from a
Yeah,
very young
I
age?
think yeah, it all goes back to early childhood. Mum and dad were, very good in teaching us the value of money. And if you want something, you work hard for it. Nothing's ever given on a silver plate. Life isn't fair. It's not rainbows and butterflies. And that's the reality of life. If you want something, you got to work for it. I think, that carried on into early school years. In terms of playing sport, I played football and rugby, and you always had to train hard. No one was ever guaranteed a place on a team. You had to earn that place. So I think from early childhood right through to where we are now, that's something that's always stuck with me. If you want something, you've got to go get it, and you've got to show that determination and experience. It comes back to, again, when I worked in house for an agency, working with the juniors, you would have tried to bring them on projects and involve them and stuff, and you're sort of going to them saying, right, who wants to work with me on this? And they also would have looked at each other. No one was really jumping out of their seat to grab it. And I'm saying to them, guys, you need to be putting your hand up here and biting my arm off to get this experience and this opportunity. So, it's always been with me throughout life. And I think, that's something I try and instill in people I meet. And it's an important part of life. I think there's a sort of generation now with a little bit of entitlement, should we maybe say? They think they're just going to get a job, and the big bad world's nice. And, I think some people are going to be in for a culture shock, this sort of new generation, especially after the COVID.
Yeah, I've seen that coming through even with my own clients as well, that they believe that they're all going to be YouTubers or they're all going to be gamers or, yes, the world is changing, but you still have to work.
Mhm.
The people who are going to be working hard and working smart, they're the ones that are going to be advancing over everybody else who are sitting back and waiting for things to happen to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a perfect example, I was having coffee with a friend a couple of days ago, and he works in a law firm, and they had a paralegal had just started, and the paralegal lasted 5 days and quit, because she said she wanted to work from home 5 days a week. And she didn't realize she had to come into the office. And they're trying to say, listen, you need to be here learning, you need to be here for clients. And there's a lot of that. Speaking to friends and colleagues, that sort of new generation, they don't want to ever step in an office, and that works for some industries. But for a lot, it doesn't. At that age, you need to be in companies every day, soaking up that knowledge and that experience like a sponge and learning from people. And I think you really don't get that working from home. But yeah, listen, it's a different generation, it's a different mindset. The world, like you say, is changing. So I think we need to come to some hybrid or middle point where it works for both employee and employer.
Yeah, and I do tend to see that as well with regards to organizations advertising for particular roles, but there are some roles that cannot be done from home whatsoever. And as of recently, there've been studies showing that hybrid works, but
Mhm.
for certain industries, not for all.
Yeah.
And you know yourself, if you've ever been in a room compared to being in at home, it's much easier to reach across the room and go,
Mhm.
Andrew, what about this? What about that?
Mhm.
Great, you can get the problem solved straight away. But if you're working from home, you have to schedule a meeting. You have to wait for that meeting to happen. There's no spontaneity. It's all planned, but I think it's a bit too much
Mhm.
planning. And
Yeah,
it's
there's too
it's
much time doing the sort of, trying to coordinate diaries, and let's jump on a call and do this. But like say, if you're in an office, you can literally walk over to someone and ask them the question, and it's resolved in 30 seconds. So yeah, like hybrid does work for certain organizations, but it's not for everyone. And I think that's probably something like Gen Z can wrap their head around. They see that I can do my job from home, but yes, you may be able to do it, but are you advancing your own personal skills and
Hmm.
your own development? And that's a big part of being a good employee and being able to advance through a company.
Could you have done your job from home as, say, a graduate?
I think to some degree, yes, I probably could have. My first big job after being a graduate, I was handed a laptop and said, "Do you have a mobile phone?" Yes, and I said, "Yeah," and they said, "Right, away you go. That's you ready for work." So to some degree, yes, I could have. But I can think, of roles straight away where you definitely couldn't have done that. I think I was very fortunate, and if the timings had been different, if I was coming out of uni and having that during the COVID sort of experience, then yes, I probably could have got away working from home. But I always like that personal touch. I like seeing people in person and having coffees and meetings. I get Zoom; it's convenient for more people. But I think you lose that personal element, and especially in that comms and PR role, having that face-to-face communication with someone, it's really important, and it builds that trust between you and the client.
Mm.
And again, that's a massive part of being in that industry.
Yeah, and I think you lose a lot via Zoom and online, because you can't see the whole of the body, and
Mhm.
we react unconsciously to a lot of signals that the body is putting outward, but you can't really get that on Zoom. And even whenever you're doing a Zoom call, the person who's speaking needs to bring 100% of that energy every single time they speak, or they
Yeah.
lose that engagement piece with the people who are on Zoom. So it's a really difficult skill. It's a skill nevertheless, and it can be learned, but it's really difficult to learn that skill because building rapport in person is is so much more easy
Mhm.
because you're
Yeah.
picking up on those subtleties.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think even from my experiences, going back 6, 7 years, we were already losing that interpersonal skills. We would have had young kids in from school, doing work experience with us, and they were scared to pick up the phone and call someone. They were saying, "Can I not email them?" or "Cannot text them?" There's this real fear around speaking to someone on a phone, and certainly that Gen Z, I've definitely noticed that a lot more in the last couple of years in particular. You ask them to make a phone call and it's some big scary thing. It's almost like you've asked them to go in front of the board of directors and pitch for business. So it is. So, there's already been that loss of interpersonal connection and those soft skills that you and I would have, probably taken for granted back in the day. It's not a big deal for us to pick up the phone and speak to someone, but then this newer generation, they think it's a lot quicker and easier to email someone. But again, that's back to what we were saying about asking someone in the office about something. If I want to, find out the cost to get something printed, I pick up the phone and I have an answer straight away. Whereas if I'm emailing them, it could be a couple of hours before I hear back from them. So again, for me, it's a little sad that we're losing those personal skills, and it's not necessarily just on a work related level. I always say to my wife when we're out for dinner, you look around and you see the couples sitting at the dinner table and they're both heads in the phone, not engaging. And then as soon as the starter arrives, they're eating and then it's back to the phone again. So, it's a thing that's probably been a byproduct of COVID and lockdown as well. We're just so much more engaged in phones, and we really have lost that personal touch.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The personal touch has definitely gone. Those interpersonal skills. I would go into quite a few schools and colleges and universities and talk around interpersonal skills and communication. And asking someone to lift their phone and make a call to a friend they've known forever or a parent is absolutely unheard of. It is one of the most embarrassing things I've been told that a young person could do nowadays. I mean, gone are the days where you'd maybe even rap the door to see if your friend was coming out. Now
Mm.
you text from the bottom of the street to say I'm here and I'll meet you around the corner.
Yeah.
Again, they don't understand the value, in my opinion, because you have to speak, you have to learn that value,
Mm.
you have to be able to communicate, and you have to be able to sell yourself.
Mhm.
And here in Northern Ireland, where we're from, it seems that is even more difficult because there's a real cultural challenge that we have where it is stemmed from our youth, where we've always been told children should be seen and not heard.
Mhm.
So we've actually had to break that self-limiting belief going forward and learn how to speak and learn how to be seen. And even yourself as a business owner, myself as a business owner, potentially 20 years ago, we would have been told to listen, just go get a job. You'll be fine. Keep your head down. And that term is used. Keep your head down, and you'll be okay. You'll get what you need to get. But that's not true. You need to put your head up above everybody else. Not that you need to be louder, but you need to at least be heard. Because if you're not heard, you're not going to be seen either.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, words are so powerful, and especially when it comes to interviews and being able to sell yourself. If you're scared to speak to someone, you're going to struggle. And I think this generation, it's probably something they're just used to it. That's the way it's been, and that's all they've ever known. But I think, if I'm particularly myself looking at it as a business owner, if someone comes to me and they can't sell themselves and sell why they're going to be a benefit to my business, it's to me, then, they're wasting my time as well. They're not the right fit for me or my business, especially in my line of work. A lot of people think we just pick up a camera and take a pretty photo and that's it. But personal skills are so important. I cannot stress that enough, because we have to be personable with our clients. We have to get the best out of them, and we have to put them at ease and have a bit of crack with them. And the best way to do that is to be personal with them and just be good to them. So if I have someone who's really shy but they can take a nice photo, I'm sorry, you're not the right fit for me or my business.
Yeah. And so how do you sort of coach that out of them? If you do at all, or is that sort of stomped out at the interview and recruitment stage? They sort of don't go any further.
Yeah, so my way of looking at it is their standard of work obviously is the first thing I look at, and that has to be a certain level. There's no way around that. So I would normally do my due diligence, look at what they're doing work wise, who they've worked with, kind of the level of projects they're doing. And then what I normally do is it's very informal. I meet them for a coffee and just say, I think there could be a potential here for you to work with us. I'd love just to have a chat. And it's very relaxed, informal setting. We just meet, have a general chat about why they're looking to get into this industry, and who they're working with. And normally from that, I get a good vibe of people. And for most of the guys that come on board and work, it's one and done. I get a feeling straight away. With them, can I put this person in front of a client? I always say you pick your best client, your platinum level, and you think, right, could I send this person to work with this person? Are they going to be a good fit? And that's sort of my criteria. They also have to be a good fit for me and get on well with me. But then I have to think of the others as well. How are they going to get on with the wider team? If I send a couple of them to work on a project together. So there's a little of that. But for the most part, they have to be personal. They have to be good people. There has been people in the past that I've looked at and I've thought, wow, their work is super high standard. They're doing a lot of good stuff. And then you sort of look at the personality and the person behind it, and it's not at that professional enough level. I couldn't send you to the platinum standard client to do a job. I would be worried you would either say something or not do something inappropriate, but something that's not a standard that I associate with my brand. So it's hard to do that because you really love their work and you love what they do, and their stuff's really, really good. But again, if I put you in front of a client and I can't trust you, you're not the right fit for me, unfortunately.
Yeah. What a great insight actually for all our listeners with regards to how an interviewer actually thinks. And what I would always say is you have the skills to be employed, or you would not be sitting in front of the interviewer.
Mm-hmm.
It's all then about you, how you sell yourself, how you put yourself across. And in their minds as an interviewer, what they're thinking is, could I work with this person for 40 hours? Could they work with my clients, my real important clients? Are they going to give me more hassle, or are they going to benefit me? Those are the thought processes that go through most heads when they're sitting there. And I'm glad you reinforce that as well, because it's just about how you put yourself across. How you sell yourself is so important. If you're not going to smile, if you're not going to give eye contact, those are some real basic stuff. The questions, yes, you can answer the questions. And I love how you do your recruitment, by the way. That sort of relaxed standard is lovely, because it does help people relax into the interview, and it becomes more of a conversation.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, can I work with this person?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for me, it's always having the client in mind at the end of it. if I bring someone on board and put them in front of that platinum level client, if they do something that ends up, costing me that client and they leave my business, that's on me because I've made the wrong call there and bringing them on board. So the client's always at the forefront of the mind. Can this person, one, benefit the business, but two, are they professional enough and good enough to work with a platinum level client? And for the most part, anyone that I've brought on, they absolutely smash it out of the park every time. And I've no issue, going on holiday and saying to some of the guys, I need you to cover these jobs while I'm away, and I don't even need to check with the client if they've done a good job, because I know the guys 10 out of 10 every time do it. So yeah, as much as it's about me and the business and their work, I think the end goal is always going to be the client. So you always have to have a them in your thought process for that.
That's wonderful, and I'm very happy for you that you've been able to choose those right people. Not everybody is as lucky as that,
No.
but I'm sure for you to get to the stage that you're at today, you've had to go through a few interviews of your own. Yeah.
Yeah, just a few. I think I've been very fortunate that I've had quite a lot of good experiences. There's only a few bad ones spring to mind, but I think for the most part, it's always been a good experience for me. It's always been a learning experience for me. And certainly during those early days, after uni, rejection letter after rejection letter, not even getting to the interview stage. And then when you do get to the interview stage, it's no, sorry, we're going with someone else. So yeah, there's been a lot of rejection along the way.
I take it it's that sort of resilience building, if you want, for want of a better phrase,
Yeah.
resilience building.
Absolutely. When you get the first few rejection letters, it's really downtrodden, and you think, is this really for me? And certainly you're going to get more no's and you're going to get yeses, is the thing. And
Mm.
you can't take it personally. There's so many people applying for each role now that you're just a number. So you can't take it too personally. So you can't, these employers are getting hundreds of applicants for jobs, and there's only one place, so one person's got it, and unfortunately a lot of people are going to lose out.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to make. That out of the 100 people that have applied, potentially one gets the job and 99 do not.
Yeah, exactly.
99 do not. So the numbers are not really stacked in your favor at any time.
Mhm.
However, you can stack them like you did, with your volunteering work.
Mhm.
But I think this is a great point right now to bring in your worst job interview ever, because I think you're going to have a good one, Andrew. I think we're
Yeah,
going to
well,
learn a lot from this.
I hope so. There's sort of two that spring to mind. One is an actual interview process, and then two was sort of the day after an interview process. When I started the job. So we'll start with the first one. So, I had applied for a marketing job with a marketing company in Belfast, and essentially it was glorified door-to-door sales, if we're being completely honest. So I went in and met the boss of the company, had a really good interview. She said to me, I think you're going to be a really good fit here. You have sort of the knowledge and the experience, and you're sort of what we're looking for. So I thinking this is brilliant. And she said, can you come back the next day, and we'll send you out with one of the teams, and they're going to interview you throughout the day and sort of put you to work, essentially, just to see, how they get on with you, and if you're a good fit. So I said, yeah, that's no problem. So the next day came, I went out. I think there was four other people, and came out. We all got in a car together and headed towards North Coast direction. And they were just sort of asking me the general interview questions, sort of, what's your experience? What have you done in the past, that kind of thing. And we're maybe only 10 minutes into the interview, and the guy driving the car pulled into a petrol station, and he said to me, I just need to fill up here because we're obviously going up the North Coast and need to top up. So I'm thinking, right, okay, no problem. So we're sitting, and everyone gets out of the car except me, and I'm thinking this is really sort of strange. And I was in the passenger seat, and I sort of looked in the wing mirror, and I could see them all huddled around one of the petrol pumps, having a chat and looking back at the car. And I thought, something's really weird here with this interview. So there was a knock at the window, and one of them opened the door, and they said, can you get out of the car? And I sort of thought, okay, right, what's going on here? So I got out, and they says, we've just had a quick team meeting, and we don't think this job's for you. So can you find your own way home? We're going. And they jumped in the car, drove off, and there was me left standing in the middle of a petrol court. absolutely chucking it down in West Belfast. So I was sort of like, okay, that's a very strange job interview, and that's the end of it. So that was hands down the worst one. And I sort of called the boss and explained to her what happened, and she said, "Oh, there must have been a mistake. Will you come back tomorrow and we'll send you out with another team?" And I politely told her where she could put her job, and that was that interview done and dusted. So it was. So
Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
they're very
That
very very strange.
that is weird. I can't find
Very
another word for that. That is weird.
yeah. That whenever you said to me about worst job interview, that's the first one that springs to mind, and that was probably 10 plus years ago. So I don't know where any of those people are. I don't think the company even exists anymore. So I maybe had a lucky escape. Put it that
Maybe
way.
so, maybe so. And I think when you reflect back upon it and you look at it and you think, I get into a car with four people I didn't know to drive to somewhere I didn't know I was going for an interview. You're probably thinking, what is going on here? Why did I
Yeah,
do that?
yeah. Looking back now, like if I had a child and they told me that, I was like, do not get in that car with those people. It's a very strange interview process. But yeah, it just because straight away you think, did I say something wrong? They sort of asked me where I lived and where my background was, and where I went to uni, and that was about as many questions as I got before I was sort of dragged out of the car and told to find my own way home. So yeah, that was definitely one of the strangest interviews, and one of the worst. The other one that sort of sprang to mind was a public sector job. Again, it was only an initial 6 month contract, but I thought, let's see the other side of how things work. And again, get another 6 months experience under my belt. So they had said to me in the interview, there's a really good chance you're going to be kept on here, and there's a full-time role for you at the end of this 6 months. So I thought, this is brilliant. Flew through the interview process. They rang me the next day and said, you were head and shoulders above everyone. We really want you. So, that's obviously a really good feeling to hear that. So I essentially started the next day after that. And the very first morning I went in, it was only me and my line manager. That was all that worked in that department. And she said, can I have a quick chat? And I thought, oh God, is she going to get rid of me already? And this was before I'd even sat down at the desk for day one. And she brought me into a meeting room, and she said to me, she's like, I just want to let you know there's no funding to keep you on. So I'm just saying there's definitely no job at the end of it. And I sort of thought, right, that's the motivation I want on day one before I've even sat down for the next 6 months. So yeah, that's not really what you want to hear when you're sort of sold on there's a good chance there's a full-time job for you at the end of this. So yeah, they're the two that spring to mind. Not the most horrible ones, but certainly the worst I've experienced.
They sound quite horrible from my point of view, both.
Mm,
Even that second one, yes, the interview process potentially was quite structured
mm,
and it was quite good.
yeah.
But setting expectations at the interview stage
Mm,
should not really happen.
mm,
That should be set in the room afterwards, or when you're being offered that poster position. It just shows you that you walked in there thinking, happy days, I have an opportunity here to go forward, to potentially have a full-time job. And then that motivation, or the carpet was ripped right from under your feet on day one.
Day one. I hadn't even got sitting at the desk.
Wow. That potentially that should have told you a lot about that person and department.
Yeah,
Some people could look at that as a good thing to say,
yeah,
well, at least they told me up front.
yeah. No, absolutely. And that was a learning curve, that 6 months. I really got my eyes opened, and that person in particular, I don't think was the right fit for me in terms of developing me. There was other departments, comms departments within that organization that actually reached out to her and said, we think this guy would really benefit from being with us. Like, we've loads of stuff he can be working on, and we really need his skill set. And she refused to let me go. And it got to the point where, she was asking me to go pick up wine for her caravan at the weekend and stuff like this. And it was just,
Wow.
it wasn't the real experience that I had sort of hoped or wanted. So, the fact there was no full-time job at the end of that, I was kind of glad, to be honest.
Hmm.
It was just, sort of that demotivation. Day one, you're sort of told, right, you're going to bust your hip here for 6 months and impress us, but there's no job at the end of it. Sort of like, right, well, why would I? I can just come in every day, 9 to 4, and earn my wage and leave. Can put in minimal effort. There was no real reason to sort of go above and beyond yourself. But that's not the kind of person I was. I was determined to go in and show what I could do and what I could deliver on. And then at the end of 6 months, I could walk away and say, listen, this is what you could have had. It's
Yeah.
someone else is going to benefit from it now. And that was the case. I finished that contract 3 days before Christmas, and it got to mid-January, and I started in a new place. So it's sort of about an extended Christmas break, and then I was straight into another job in January.
Well, the outcome sounds good. The experience doesn't sound great. But as you had said at the very beginning, you learn from these experiences. And there's no negative experiences, there's just experiences. And I'm a great believer in a little saying, there's no failure, there's only feedback. It doesn't matter what type of feedback, it's still feedback. And it's what you do with that feedback that's really, really important.
Yeah. No,
So
absolutely.
based upon that thought process, if you were to go back and give any sort of advice to young Andrew, just about interviews in general, something that he should not do and something that he definitely should do,
Yeah.
what would those be?
I would probably say don't have that fear. It's a conversation. It's you one side of the desk, someone else the other side of the desk. I think we get too wrapped up in being scared and fear, and that gives us that paralysis that we probably don't perform to our best and really sell ourselves. So it's probably, yes, don't have that fear. It's okay to be nervous. Nervous shows you care, and nervous shows your passion, but don't let that override you. Hold your head high, chin up, go in there and really sell yourself. So I think, yeah, what I would do is probably just be a bit more confident in yourself as well, because there's a point where you have so many rejections and you're just going through the motions of going to another interview, and you're sort of already going in there and thinking you're not going to get it. I think having a bit more of a positive mindset is definitely the way to go. So yeah, drop the nerves and be more positive in yourself, because I think when you believe in yourself and you're projecting that positivity, that's really going to come across to whoever's interviewing you.
That's perfect and great advice. That is potentially the same advice I would give to many of my clients. My clients are very experienced people, really knowledgeable, know exactly what they're doing, could do the job with their eyes closed, and could do the job that they're going for with their eyes closed, potentially are doing the job already, but they lack that self-belief. They lack that confidence in themselves. And that takes years for that to happen, for that confidence to be stripped away, because they've come to me and said, Kevin, I never used to be like this. And it's just as the time has gone on, they've got less and less confident about going for that next role. And that fear becomes more and more. And a lot of times they come to me to help them answer questions, to structure their answers better so that they sound more professional when they go in. But we can't even get to answering the questions or constructing those questions because they don't have that level of confidence or self-belief that they can deliver them in the manner that needs to be delivered. An interview is a lot of small pieces that stack up and compound. The answers and the structures to the questions, that's only one piece. How you deliver it, that's another piece. How you show up non-verbally, that's another piece. How you show up verbally, that's another piece. And it's working on all of those little tiny bits, pulling them all together. That's when you start to see that big picture. Or for want of another phrase, it's a jigsaw.
Yeah.
All the pieces need to come together to make the picture of the interview.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely agree 100%. And, with my clients, one of the biggest challenges is, self-confidence, like you say. And for me, it's what I always tell people, mindset is one of the biggest challenges to being a business owner. And it's something I really struggled with in the beginning. I was worrying that work wasn't coming in, and it just takes time to develop that mindset, and not everyone has the same mindset, and there's no one size fits all for it. So, and for example, in my own business, if I looked at my diary when I first started and there wasn't jobs in for the next week, I'd be starting to panic and think, I'm not getting work here. But in reality, people book me maybe 2, 3 days in advance for work. So, it was a real shift in mindset for me going from a 60-hour week in agency where you're busy 24/7 and on call 24/7 to sort of, okay, well, I might have a Wednesday morning free, but I might have to work a Saturday night. And that took time to overcome that barrier. And yes, there are a lot of other challenges when it comes to being a business owner, but for me, it's always mindset. It always comes back to mindset. The business doesn't work without the right mindset, and unfortunately, you're the one at the head of the table, and it's up to you to develop that. But it takes time, and some people really it takes years to develop. Other people get it straight away, but it's one thing that is always ongoing. Don't get me wrong. There's some days I still wake up and I'm sort of thinking, am I right for doing this? And you do challenge yourself and you're your own worst critic. But mindset is for me always the biggest challenge to being a business owner.
Absolutely. I completely agree. It's also one of the biggest hurdles for any candidate going for an interview as well. It's getting into that mindset of thinking, I am good enough to go for this job initially. I am the right person. I do have the skills that they require. And again, it's that back to that self-belief and that confidence. And it's about stripping away years of self-limiting beliefs so they can get to the core of that person.
Mm.
You've seen it within your own clients as well. If you can get to the core of the person, they are a very different person than what they are projecting to the world most days. And if you can build that person back up again and allow them that space and that time to grow, they will absolutely flourish. And I too, like yourself, have woke up some mornings thinking, right, there's nothing in the diary this week. And then all of a sudden, bang, it just goes. Again, I'm like you. People come to me at lastminute.com because they've an interview on Tuesday and today's Monday. Now, for those particular type of clients, there's not much I can help them with except to reassure them that they're either doing the right thing and pointing them in the right direction. Preparing for an interview is like everything. It's like training for the Olympics. You got to put in the practice, you got to put in the time, you got to sacrifice a little bit to get to where you want to be. And some people don't foresee this and they don't really factor in or plan in the time or even the sacrifice that they need to make to get to where they need to be. And I think that's the same for most entrepreneurs as well. We talked about that squiggly line to get to where we actually need to be. It's never straight.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly the same with interviewing. The process is similar with regards to building up that self-confidence. But confidence comes at the end of the process.
Yeah.
You don't start with confidence and then work your way to going in to that interview or starting your own business.
Mm-hmm.
You start with the concept, you start with the event, and you work towards becoming confident. And once people start to realize that actually, hold on, I don't need confidence to do this, it'll come. That helps people. But it's
Yeah.
because they don't understand their own thinking and they don't understand their own decision making or their own decision patterns. That's when they start to really tumble around and go in different directions. And yes, potentially, both from what you and I can do, they can learn it on the internet. Absolutely, go ahead, learn it on the internet. But it's that time saving, it's that equipment, that's that experience, it's that best practice that we have been there, done that, made those mistakes, and been able to point people in the right direction so they don't make those mistakes, so they can save themselves time, save themselves some money, and save themselves some energy to really enjoy what they're doing. So they can get out of bed every morning and go, this is not a job. This is great. I am grateful for everything that I have right here today. And if you can get to that sort of mindset, which does take time, both you and I know it takes time. It takes consistency as well. But it takes the right amount of consistency, the right amount of time, but also people going in the right direction. Sometimes they need guided, sometimes they need supported, and sometimes they need an arm around the shoulder or a kick in the backside. Have to find what motivates people. We have to find what really drives them when that dairy is empty. Because it's not always the money that is the motivator. So we need to just continue to look for that in people and help. And I know you do that as part of what you do as well. And that must be very, very rewarding for you because I know it's rewarding for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's people commonly have that imposter syndrome and they don't think they're good enough. And, you know, when you work with them, you can see a big change in a very short period of time. Sometimes it takes months to see that, but um, we get it. We've been there. We've done that. We've made that leap. There's never a right time to make that leap. There's no point in life where all the stars align, everything's perfect, and nothing's ever going to go wrong. That just doesn't happen. I could never have seen COVID coming when I started my
Yeah.
business, and that was 6 months where I literally could not work. So there's never a right time, and we've all had that imposter syndrome, and it's just working on yourself and working on that self-confidence. And it's not necessarily doing your affirmations and looking at yourself in the mirror every morning. It's just having that confidence to speak to someone and say, I am good enough. I am a business owner. This is what I do. And some people get that really easily and other people don't. But it's as much as it's about buying a product or a service from someone, you're also buying the person. So,
Mhm.
you have to have that self-confidence in yourself to attract other customers and people to your business. So as much as it's about working on that service or products that you may sell, there's so much work business owners need to do on themselves to help grow their businesses.
Absolutely. And there was a phrase that I was told when I was in training many, many years ago, and it's people buy people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People buy people. And when you think about that, it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
It's so true. If you can get in front of someone and sell the service or product that you're offering, they're not just buying that product or service, they're buying you as the person. You're the face of the organization. You're the face of the brand.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not giving over that really good selling points, then they're going to look at the brand and think, well, if that's the best they can sell it, that's not for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why it
Absolutely.
always comes back to me when I'm looking at bringing people on board for projects. What are they like personally?
Yeah.
Again, that brings it right back to where we are full circle. That's why that process is in place then for myself and my brand.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that. And the I think for my listeners today, the takeaways are very, very, very simple. They're really simple. Celebrate those small wins. You said that at the very beginning. They don't come around very often. Celebrate them. Even if it's two £10 on the lottery,
Mhm.
celebrate them. Go out and celebrate it. Whatever way you do that. Even if it's pull yourself over to the side of the road and have a little dance in your car, wee car party. Absolutely. Celebrate those small wins.
Mm.
The second one for me is that doing volunteering work actually put you ahead of other people who were in a similar not experience, but a similar um, that had similar criteria to you, that put you ahead, and you done that yourself. You went out and you found those roles because they are out there.
Mhm.
People will take somebody on if they didn't have to pay them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's only about knocking the door again, isn't it?
Exactly. It's, contacting local charities, local community organizations, and just offering your service and offering it free of time. It's always, how can I be a benefit to your organization? And most charities will jump at the chance to have an
Mm.
extra pair of hands, especially if it's something that people in the charity don't really know, whether it's marketing, whether it's admin, whatever it may be. If an extra pair of hands can come in and help benefit that charity, by all means, they're more than happy to have people.
Yeah. And if they don't have to pay for it, that's even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But there was the biggest the biggest takeaway I think the listeners should take with them today is that the interview is a conversation. It's just a conversation.
Mm.
Doesn't matter if there's three or four people on that side of the table and just you sitting on this side of the table. It's just a conversation. And it's if you can reframe that in your mind to being just a conversation, it does reduce that anxiety and remove a lot of the nerves that you have because you don't really get anxious when you're having a conversation with a friend,
Mm.
family member, a work colleague. So it's just a conversation, and all they're asking is to find out what you know.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
I always say with interviews, there's no real super difficult question or trick question. They're just there to find out about you and how you benefit their business. That's it. It's a nice informal formal chat. It may feel like a formal setting, but they're not out to try and trick you or to get you to say something you shouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. Andrew, how can anybody, if they want to get in contact with you, reach you?
Yeah. So if anyone wants to have a chat, it doesn't matter whether it's about photography, entrepreneurship, starting your own business, whatever it may be, they can drop me a message on LinkedIn. They can go to the 8590.com website, or you can reach me on Instagram. Again, 8590. Just reach out, drop me a message, and I'm more than happy to have a chat.
Andrew, thank you very much. It's been really, really educational, and I'm sure my listeners would have taken lots away from this, because I know I have taken lots away from this. So thank you. Look out for our next episode, where we will hear more stories and tales from behind the interview curtain. But until then, remember, on the other side of a successful interview is the life you all deserve.
For more details about our guest, or if you would like to be a guest, go to www.interviewskillscoach.co.uk/myworstinterviewever, or find us on Facebook or LinkedIn. And remember, on the other side of a successful interview is the life you deserve.